on the books, and everyone is blaming everyone else for the current job crisis. The president is blaming Congress. Congress is blaming the president. Business is blaming regulation and taxation. Marchers are blaming Wall Street. It's all smoke. Opportunists taking advantage of the situation to push their own personal agendas. I created this video on the CEO's role in job destruction to help clear the air. Those responsible for getting rid of jobs in the first place were the CEOs of every company that's gone through downsizing. When it started, most of their companies were profitable, had healthy cash flows, and good market positions, but somehow they all got into the same downward spiral. How could that happen? I'm about to show you. Let me start with a brief discussion on what a healthy business model looks like. A business enterprise is a living organism with three domains. Your customers are focused on three things: products and services that meet real needs, access and availability of those products and services, and the performance of those products and services in meeting their changing needs over time, i.e., how well the company executes and delivers. The second part of the enterprise is employee plant, concerned with having the right people in the right jobs, the reward systems to attract, motivate, and retain those people, and operating efficiencies, i.e., how much of top-line revenue can you get to bottom-line profit. The third segment of the enterprise is the stockholder, whose interests are looked after by the board of directors. The board's focus is sources of operating capital, shareholder return on equity, and balancing the risk-earnings equation, i.e., determining what business activities the company will or won't be allowed to pursue. What I've covered so far is basic to every enterprise. The following points may differ across different industries, but can be determined for a specific company by spending just minutes reviewing the first few pages of their annual report. The example that follows is for Wells Fargo Bank circa 1989, when they were one of the best banks in the industry. No two companies, even if they're providing the same products and services, rationalize their business in the same way. In 1989, Wells Fargo was organized around four primary product lines: retail banking, products for the general consumer; wholesale banking, services and products for large commercial customers; real estate, financing large construction projects; and investment management, basically their trust business. At any point in time, there are major issues, problems shared by everyone in an industry. For banking, in 1989, those issues were loan quality, what's already on the books and hurting the balance sheet; excess capacity, no bank was getting good utilization on their current infrastructures; industry-wide inefficiencies, and the threat of disintermediation, the incursion of non-banks like Schwab into the traditional banking space. Every company has priorities that they're focused on achieving near term. For Wells Fargo in 1989, those were credit quality, what they were currently putting on the books that would determine their future; capital strength, Wells had a weak balance sheet and needed to fix it; using new technologies to automate processes and improve efficiencies, hence improving financial performance. Like any living organism, an enterprise must adapt to its environment in order to survive and thrive. The banking environment includes regulatory, the rules of the game in a particular industry; capital markets, credibility and sustained performance being the key to investor confidence and the ability to raise additional capital; uniform commercial code, staying in step with constantly changing norms within an industry; litigation trends, especially in areas like labor law; and the local, state, national, and international economies. As go the economy, so goes a company's financial performance in a particular market, sector, or geography. Profit has always been the driving force in American capitalism. It follows a simple formula: revenues minus expenses equal profits. Pretty simple. Classically, those profits were either retained by the company to grow the business or disgorged periodically to investors as their return on equity, typically as dividends. Until the 1980s, the executives that ran these enterprises were compensated with a six-figure salary and a reasonable bonus if their boards were satisfied with company performance. This model served us well through most of the 20th century. But when boards began taking free money from Wall Street and including large stock grants in executive comp, often at the insistence of Wall Street speculators, everything began to change. I'll show you in a moment how those pressures have distorted the classic business model of American capitalism. First, it began with lobbyists and lawyers chipping away at the banking laws of the 1930s, enacted to protect the economy from the ravages of excessive speculation. By the year 2000, all those controls had been removed. With the Supreme Court decision in 2010 to legalize super PACs, Wall Street money now owns Congress, and our very system of democratic government is in jeopardy. The wolves have been given full run of the barnyard. Excessive speculation has become the order of the day. The growth of derivatives in the 8 short years since they were deregulated to $2,200 trillion, 37 times the entire global GDP, is a glaring example of the ravages brought on by deregulation. Investors have been replaced by speculators who now rule our economy. The regulations that kept Wall Street under control for almost 70 years were simple and straightforward, bright lines in the sand. Glass-Steagall, the cornerstone of banking regulation, was just 37 pages long, repealed in 1999, and replaced with special interest legislation, Sarbanes-Oxley and Frank Dodd being key examples, which run on for thousands and thousands of pages, erasing the bright line that had existed before. While Congress has given the wolves that fill their coffers free rein, they've encumbered American businesses. Trust them up for the plucking. There was a turning point in the capital markets several decades ago when capital suddenly became free, as an inducement for getting more companies into the Wall Street betting pool. Greater returns were to be had speculating on price movement than could ever be had from corporate profits. The scene was set for some very bad behavior. All that is required from a company in return for this free capital is an unending stream of news to drive share price movement. Up or down, speculators don't care. They make money in both directions. Price stagnation is the only thing they fear. They make their money from new speculators entering the betting pool, not from profits generated by the businesses underlying the stock. By every definition, a pyramid or Ponzi scheme. This form of betting has always been a part of American capitalism, but is a well-regulated sideline. With deregulation, it's become rampant, and it's made the business environment very toxic. The moment a company takes free capital from Wall Street, it becomes a betting prop. Its business model becomes pro-cancerous and begins to mutate. Let me demonstrate. Staying with the banking example, to meet quarterly Wall Street expectations, a bank is forced to leverage the funds placed in their possession for safekeeping, taking on ever-increasing risk. They shift away from balance-based services to highly leveraged activities like derivatives. They engage in questionable practices like program trading and become obsessed with transaction fees at the expense of customer service and delivering true value in the marketplace. The entire industry begins to abandon their traditional values. There's an ever-increasing tolerance for putting customer monies at risk. Everyone stays in lockstep and no one goes to jail for shady dealings. Windfall profits are privatized, while record losses and defaults are picked up by government and the taxpayer, the worst possible combination of capitalism and socialism. Company priorities and objectives change. Instead of running the company with a long view, focus on sustained performance, delivering true customer value, providing a healthy work environment, and a reasonable return to investors from real corporate profits. The entire company becomes focused on the daily stock price and delivering the performance metrics dictated by Wall Street analysts. You start doing things to make this quarter's numbers that jeopardize long-term viability. like mortgaging your future by sucking the deal pipeline dry. Offloading assets that are core to the business. Offloading jobs, sending those core disciplines offshore, and an obsession with period-over-period growth in profit margins, earnings per share, etc., none of which are long-term sustainable for most companies. It wasn't until the 1990s that the notion stockholder is king came into vogue. Since then, board advocates for the employee and the customer have become almost non-existent. It's all about serving Wall Street now. To keep their jobs, CEOs must be willing to do anything necessary to satiate the quarterly demands of Wall Street, regardless of social consequences. Their total focus has to be market cap inflation, price appreciation, and squeezing out the quarterly numbers at any cost. Here's the effect this behavior has on the business model. The stockholder part of the enterprise starts to grow like a tumor, putting pressure on the other organs of the enterprise. Quarter over quarter, these pressures continue to increase. Reductions in staff, plant, and equipment start impacting the firm's ability to deliver products and services. Current customers become dissatisfied, and it becomes harder to win new business. In the first few cycles, the CEOs will claim they're just trimming fat, but they're soon cutting away muscle and bone. This behavior is incented and sustained by Wall Street insisting that a large part of CEO comp be tied to stock performance. But the quarterly demands are never satiated. Every quarter the same pressures are exerted again. More jobs and assets are pushed off the books to hit the numbers and meet analyst expectations one more time. The company starts to lose market share. It's like a prize fighter trying to make weight by sawing off a leg before getting on the scales, then another leg next quarter. You get the picture. This scenario repeats itself quarter after quarter. More jobs destroyed. Revenues and profits go into a downward spiral as the CEO continues chasing the only thing he still controls, the expense side of the equation. Institutional short sellers start moving in, at which point the ending is inevitable. Lawyers have built an industry around what happens next. Shareholder lawsuits start flooding in. Again, this is what happens when a major part of a CEO's compensation is tied to stock performance. Even if the company doesn't go under during his or her tenure, they will leave the enterprise in worse condition than it was in when they began their tenure. At some point, the company becomes delisted and is taken out of the game. Remember, companies that take free capital from Wall Street are just betting props, ponies on the racetrack that once their race is run, generally get put down. Wall Street devours their young when they're through with them. So many American businesses bought into this game over the past 4 decades that it's put the entire world economy into a downward spiral. In the first decade, we offshored all our industrial might, saying, no worries, America will become a services economy. In the last decade, we've offshored all those jobs as well. It's resulted in tens of millions out of work. The official numbers are vastly understated, and those jobs are never coming back. So, what to do about it? Here's the bad news. The solutions won't come from the current generation of economists, lawyers, legislatures, etc. They're locked into the current paradigms and can't see beyond the rules and rhetoric they've been taught were the truth. They're Copernicans trained to believe that the universe, capitalism, revolves around the sun, Wall Street. Productivity and full employment used to be a core value of American capitalism. We've somehow drifted far off the mark. If you've taken money from the devil, you're expected to do the dance. Both the blame for the current economic situation and the only possible solution to the jobs crisis rests squarely on the boards of each and every company. It's the board who decides a company's sources of capital and the consequences of those decisions, and they hire and fire the CEO. Only a CEO makes the hiring and firing decisions in a company. Not Congress, not the Fed, not the President. Our government has nothing to do with job creation, so let's stop expecting them to fix the problem. The only people who can create jobs are the CEOs. The performance objectives and compensation of every CEO need to change, putting job creation at the top of the order. Boards need to change the performance metrics of their CEOs to include more than just increasing a company's market cap. The job situation starts to reverse itself the moment boards decide that stock price needs to take a back seat for a while until we get our economy healthy again. The beauty of this approach is that it doesn't need to wait for any changes in the law, constitution, or bailouts. Board members just have to decide one day to start doing it. It's a self-help program reminiscent of what America used to stand for and can start today with immediate effect. We need a decade where boards focus on producing real value in the marketplace, not market cap, and on as much job creation as their balance sheets can support and still be marginally profitable. There are plenty of seasoned executives who will work for a six-figure salary and a good performance bonus. Tying their comp to stock price only incents all the wrong behavior and is destroying the fabric of American enterprise. Let's get back to the basics. That concludes this presentation. I would welcome your comments either here or on our blog at www.rootcausemovement.com. Thanks for your engagement.